How you doing? My name is Louis Pisono. I've lived in Rhode Island my entire life. Um, I'm a father to a soon-to-be 8-year-old beautiful baby boy who's my entire world. So I share a lot of the same sentiments that pretty much everybody who's a parent and even some of the non-parents here about the anxieties of sending your kid to school in this day and age where you have to worry about them getting shot up. I wasn't raised in a gun household. I was actually raised in a pretty anti-gun household. I became a gun owner basically for self-defense. As of late, I've gotten into competitive shooting. I fly across the country for different matches. And I can say without hesitation that we are probably one of the strictest states in the country when it comes to gun ownership. I guess the first one I want to talk about is the No Guns in Schools bill. As you know, I just said about my son, if I believe that this could keep him safer, I would support it wholeheartedly. I think part of the problem that we don't see with people who are concealed carry permit holders is that mostly everybody who doesn't want guns in schools hasn't been through the process of actually obtaining a concealed weapons permit. And I can tell you that for me, it was almost a year in my town to actually get it. And the level of vetting and background checks that they do and contacting mental health facilities and whatnot is pretty onerous. And it's actually above what the law allows. But I didn't have a problem with it because, I want to make sure that people who are handed permits are the qualified people, you know what I'm saying? With that said, I would welcome anybody who doesn't understand what we go through to actually go to their town, apply for a permit, see what the process is, get to meet some of us. The people who are causing these issues aren't permit holders. We're some of the most law-abiding citizens in the state, especially in Rhode Island, because it's been so hard to get a permit in this state, depending on which town you live, that it's something that we hold near and dear. As far as the bump stock ban, I've owned bump stocks. They're a gimmick. I get that they're put on the national stage. Realistically, a bump stock facilitates bump firing of a weapon, which essentially harnesses the recoil to facilitate the next shot. That has been around since the inception of semi-automatic weapons. The stock just happens to be what we grab onto because it's what made national headlines after Vegas, right? The biggest part that I have with the bill, problem I have with the bill is the same thing that everybody else has, is the rapid fire language. And I think that the first thing is that if you're going to define an increase in the rate of fire, or if you're going to dictate the increase of rate of fire, you first have to define what the standard rate of fire is. And what is the standard rate of fire for any of these guns? I don't see any of that language here. So it's almost like an arbitrary thing where you replace the spring, you replace this and that, and now all of a sudden you're a felon because you just increased the rate of fire that was never defined in the first place. Moving on to the assault weapons ban, I think somebody already made a great point about how, and I do get that the AR-15 is the preferred choice of weapon, but, the number 3 mass shooting still sits at Virginia Tech. 32 people died. One of those guns flies so far under the radar, 10-round magazines, everything that everybody wants us to only have was what was used to commit those atrocities. And to the point about the 223 or 5.56 round that is shot from an AR-15, causing damage to body parts, I guess people don't really understand how ballistics work because we don't talk about buckshot or slugs or anything else that is okay in everybody else's eyes. My son means so much to me that a 9mm round through him or a 223 is irrelevant. I want to make sure that that person doesn't have any gun, not just a rifle. That's what's important to me. I want him to grow up in an environment, feel safe, and not have to worry about I don't want to have these conversations with him. I'd rather have the birds and the bees convo before having this convo. And 1 second here while I read my notes. The 10-round capacity, I touched upon that a little bit with the assault weapons ban, but I believe it was Columbine. One of the guns the shooter had 10-round mags. He carried 15 or 16. I don't know the number exactly, but he carries 16 10-round magazines. So people are clearly going to find a way, to defeat these things. And then back to the assault weapons ban, California, Connecticut, all these states that we want to be like have instituted these, and they're either followed up by very little compliance, or they're followed up by gun manufacturers immediately coming up with a workaround solution. So it's, again, another Band-Aid to a societal problem that we've created in the past 20 years, or however long. Columbine happened in the middle of the assault weapons ban. In the 70s, you could have AR-15s mailed to your house. In the 80s, you could have machine guns. And then the Brady Bill came out in 91 or 92 for background checks. And then 94 was assault weapons ban. And then we've just gone downhill. And we failed to recognize what has changed in society that has led to this. I just feel like a lot of it is just plug-and-play Band-Aids. And to me, we're so fascinated with numbers that 2 weeks before Parkland, there was a school that was shot up and 2 people died, and it was like no headlines were made. 1 death is just as bad as 17 deaths. And I guess that's all I have to say about that.